hello there and welcome. We're back. Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. My name, John Scholes. Momentarily on your screen, our good pal Lior Samfiru, of course, Employment Lawyer at EmploymentLawyer.ca. Always reach out to Lior and his team. We tell you that all the time. Phone number works fine, 1-855-821-5900. Email would be ask@EmploymentLawyer.ca. Always, every week, tons of stuff to cover on the show. This week is no different. The main topic in just a bit will be family and friends, what they need to know about employment rights. That is on the way. Some phone calls, some questions. It's always a busy show, so we'll get right into it to Lior. We always start off with the case of the day. There he is. What's going on this week, pal? What do you got for me?
Johnny, great to be here. Of course, there is no lack of topics to cover on unemployment law. When it comes to your workplace rights, there's a lot to talk about. The reason there's a lot to talk about is because you have a lot of rights. You may not know or appreciate just how many rights you have. Well, I'm here to tell you there's rights when you lose your job, if you're being mistreated, if you're put on a temporary layoff, if your employer won't accommodate you. I think you get the idea. You have rights. There's things that you can do. There's help available to you so that your employer doesn't get to just break the law and do whatever it wants with impunity. So on this show, we'll cover those topics. We'll inform you. We'll give you back that power that you may have thought you lost in the workplace. Now you'll have the power. But of course, this is 30 minutes. There's only so much we can cover in those 30 minutes. That's why there's the other option, just as good, maybe even better. You can reach me in the office and have a private chat or an email exchange. We'll give you that contact information throughout the show, so don't hesitate to reach out. But of course, right now we want to talk about a case that came across my desk because there's important lessons there for everyone watching. I spoke with a lady that had worked for the same employer for quite a few years. She was an older employee in her 60s. And back during the pandemic, at some point in the second half of 2020, she moved to work remotely. She and her colleagues started working remotely, and she's been working remotely ever since. For her, this was a fantastic thing. Because she's older, this was so much easier for her not to have to commute, not to have to take public transportation and go to the office. She was working from home. Her employer was happy with her work. She was doing bookkeeping work, so there was no problem. Everything was fine. Well, recently, her employer had new ownership come in. And after a couple of months of this new ownership, the boss decided, well, I'm going to need you to come into the office twice a week to do bookkeeping work. So you can still work from home 3 times a week, but you got to come in twice a week. She, of course, was upset about that. She didn't want to. You know, she built her life around working from home. She talked to her employer and said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to continue working 5 days a week from home. Her employer then said, no, you can't. You have to come in twice a week. And if you choose not to, okay, we'll consider you to have resigned. Thankfully, she understood that this may not be right, and she called me and she wanted to understand what her rights were in this case. So here's the thing. The fact that she's been working now remotely for a few years since the pandemic means that this is now a term of her employment. She is now a remote employee. That means her employer does not just have a right to make that type of change, to make her come into the office a couple of times a week. That is a big change, and it's the type of change that her employer is not allowed to make. So she can say no. They can't force her. And if she says no and they decide to let her go because of it, they have to pay her full severance. Now, it's not a resignation, because the employer would be terminating her. They're allowed to let her go with full severance. So not a resignation. For her, she's been there for over 18 years. We're looking at potentially as much as 2 years' pay, 24 months' pay. She was very happy to hear that because she may take this opportunity to retire if they let her go. But I wanted to remind everyone, because this does come up. If your employer wants you to come into the office, you're working remotely for a while, if you want to do that, you can, but potentially you may not have to. And if you're let go, full severance is paid. It's not a resignation. It's not a job abandonment. It's not a termination for cause. You'd be entitled to severance. You'd be entitled to EI. But best advice right here, before you say no or yes or really do anything, if you're in that situation, give me a call.
Lior, quickly, how long ago did the clock run out on employers being able to call back and use COVID as an excuse?
So really, once COVID was no longer a consideration, so at some point maybe kind of in 2022, When COVID really wasn't a factor in working from home, at that point, if the employer didn't call people back into the office and allowed them to continue working remotely, it became a term of employment. So now we're several years past that. That's why if an employer lets an employee go, because they're working remotely, there's going to be consequences.
All right, Lior, keep it going. Want to get to a phone call now from one of our listeners and viewers. Let's hear what they have to say. Tune in.
The company I work for, it really looks like they're going to be closing down in the next, let's say, 6 months. I've been there 28 years, and I'm wondering what kind of severance package I would be entitled to. I'm 60. I'm a shipper. I drive a tow motor.
Wow, 28 years.
Well, significant severance. But
Yeah.
before we even talk about that, I wanted to remind everyone that just because a company is shutting down, they're going to close their doors, does not mean they get to avoid paying severance. Now, the only time a company may not pay severance is if they're formally in bankruptcy. That's very different than closing your doors. So the fact that they're no longer operating does not mean no severance is paid. They owe him severance, absolutely. Significant amount of severance. So I'm going to tell you how you can find out without even calling me if you want, how much severance he's owed, how much severance you're owed, and how you can do that completely free and completely anonymously. Well, all you do is you go to PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca. We're going to use that tool right now, the severance calculator tool, again, PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca. Let's see what that gives us. So we know that he's a forklift operator, been there for 28 years. He's 60 years of age. Severance for him is anywhere from 18 to 24 months severance. It's probably much closer to that 24-month mark. That's how much he's going to be owed, even if the company shuts down. So you see how easy it is. It took me a few seconds to read it. It's going to take you a few seconds to use that severance calculator. So check out PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca.
All right, Lior, we'll take a short break, get back into our main topic on the other side. Family and friends, what they must know about employment rights. That is on the way right here on Ask a Lawyer. Stay with us.
Lost your job? Disability denied? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on CP24.
All right, welcome back to Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. John Scholes and, of course, Lior Samfiru here every week as well. Going to give you the information how to reach out to Lior and his team on your own time. Phone number, there you go, 1-855-821-5900. Follow up with an email, ask@employmentlawyer.ca, and scan that QR code while it's up on the top right of your screen. Okay, main topic time, family and friends, what they must know about employment rights. Number one, Lior, an employee does not have the right to make big changes to their job. How about that?
So, maybe you're having a family barbecue or celebrating someone's birthday party, and you talk about employment law. People talk about their jobs, their workplace. So here's some things you need to know so you can tell others. It's probably going to come up. These are common things, and that knowledge could be very valuable to someone else, your family and friends. So as John said, the first point, of course, is your employer does not have a right to make significant changes to terms of employment. Your jobs it should be set in stone, at least the important parts, your compensation, your shifts, etc. So if your employer makes significant changes, that could be what we call a constructive dismissal. There's no way to physically restrain and stop your employer from making changes, but you have the right and the power maybe to consider them a termination, a constructive dismissal, and get severance. That severance can be as much as 24 months pay. So that's something employees need to understand. Your family and friends, they're not just bound to do whatever the employer says. If they make significant changes in terms of employment, that could be a constructive dismissal. But before they do anything, before they respond or quit in a huff, before they do any of that, they should call me so that we can do this correctly.
All right, Lior, number two is this: they are likely not an independent contractor.
So you can kind of go out on a limb and tell your family member that, you know what, you know how you think you're an independent contractor? You're really not. You've been misclassified. And the reason for that is most people that believe they're independent contractors, in fact, are misclassified. They really are employees. So unless you're running a business with a bunch of customers, you're probably not a contractor. And it doesn't matter what you signed or how you pay your taxes or what the company that you work for calls you. None of that matters. If you work for one company, you're pretty much always going to be an employee of that company, irrespective of anything. And if you are an employee, you've been just misclassified, you have various rights, including the right for overtime and vacation pay, and maybe most importantly, the right to get severance if that job goes away. So you have to keep that in mind. Your family members may say, yeah, I've been hired as an independent contractor. Stop right there. You can tell them you're probably an employee that's been misclassified. You have certain rights in that situation. If you or them, they want to talk to me, easy, just reach out, happy to connect.
Number 3, Lior, we kind of saved the big one for the last one. That is severance pay is more than 1 or 2 weeks per year of service, for sure. Everybody thinks so anyway.
So you can also go on the limb. You're talking with a family member or friend that lost your job. You don't even need to know what they've been offered in order to tell them you're owed more. You're not owed a week per year or 2 weeks per year. You're owed much more than that and much more than what you've been offered. The vast majority of people, well over 90% of people, when they lose their job, they're owed much more than what they've been offered. The main factors, of course, are your age, your position, and the length of your employment. And that severance can be as much as 24 months pay, 2 years. It is very, very rare for an employer to offer the right amount, either because the employer doesn't know better or they hope that the employee doesn't know better. Well, you now know better. You should spread the good word to your family and friends. Yeah, it's not a week per year. It's much more. And even, by the way, if you're a short service employee, that severance is going to be measured in months, not days, not weeks, even in months.
All right, good stuff, Lior. We'll keep it rolling here. Phone call number 2. Let's get that in and talk about it. Here you go.
I have an employee who is off on maternity leave, and her job is no longer available for her to come back to. So I'm wondering what my obligations are.
Wow, okay.
We're missing probably the key piece of information here, and that is, why is her job no longer available? Is the job no longer available because he hired someone else or he distributed her responsibilities to other people? That's not good enough, because he has an obligation to bring her back. And if it means letting someone else go that you hired in the meantime, he has to do that. Now, it could be a situation where he doesn't bring her back. If the job just stopped existing, maybe we restructured, the job is gone, or we shut down the department so there's just no jobs. In that situation, maybe you don't have to bring someone back from parental leave and you can just pay full severance. But in most other cases, it's going to be very problematic if you tell an employee, no, we just don't have a job for you. I know you're coming back from parental leave. You really would have to explain where that job went, why it disappeared, and would it have disappeared even if the employee did not take parental leave. If the employer can't explain that, that could be an employment standards violation, a human rights violation, wrongful dismissal, you name it, not legal, hugely problematic. And if you're an employee and you're taking parental leave and not brought back to the same job, you got to call me right away.
And with that, Lior, we'll take a short pause and we'll switch gears a bit. On the other side, we'll talk a little bit about the other half of what the firm does so well in conjunction with employment law. That would be disability law. That is coming up here on Ask a Lawyer. Stay with us.
Lost your job? Disability denied? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on CP24.
All right, welcome back to Ask a Lawyer, CP24. Good to have you along. John Scholes here, Lior Samfiru each week as well. Reach out to Lior anytime. Make that phone call, send that email. It is 1-855-821-5900. Ask at disabilityrights.ca. Ask at disabilityrights.ca. And you can scan that QR code as well. Okay, Lior, it is that time, the other half of what the firm does so well, because there's so much crossover between the two, employment and disability, that it comes up all the time. So I kind of gave a little bit of an intro there. So maybe give us some broad strokes of how it relates to you and the folks you work with across the hall, right?
Listen, some of the stories that we get with people that are dealing with issues surrounding the disability really break your heart. People that are sick, they can't work, but for years before that, they made sure they had coverage, disability coverage, short-term disability, long-term disability, and now they can't work and they're stressed and they have to support their family. But oh my gosh, thank God, at least we have this insurance now that is going to pay us, allow us to get better and still support our family. Only to then have insurance company deny benefits for no reason, or maybe approve it for a bit and then cut them off before this person is ready to come back to work. And people oftentimes call us in desperation. What do we do? How do we put food on the table here? It's because of this that we had to develop a team to deal with that exclusively. Just with these issues, we deal with individuals that have been denied disability, cut off disability, where they're not getting paid the benefits they should be getting while they're trying to get better and get back to work. So very important, if you're in that situation, know that we have your back. There are things that you can do. There are rights that you have. The insurance company doesn't just get to make the decision and go against what your doctor says. So if you're denied disability, cut off disability, if you're sick and you know you still can't work, you need to call us, let our team help you get this resolved quickly with the insurance company.
And along those lines, so well laid out by you, Leo, let's get to the phone call for this week in that regard. Listen up.
If someone goes through a traumatic experience and is later diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, or depression, what happens when they're unable to return to work? Let's say they're approved for short-term disability but then denied long-term benefits. Because of insufficient medical evidence, what can they do to appeal that decision?
Good call.
Yeah, well, so there's a lot to unpack here. So first of all, if the person still can't work, they should be approved for long-term disability, okay? They absolutely should be approved for that disability. And if the insurance company says, well, you're just not disabled enough, that's ridiculous. If she can't work, the doctor says they can't work, well, the insurance company needs to pay what they owe, and they should be receiving these benefits, okay? The insurance company often deny it for no reason. They may not believe the invisible illness sometimes, if it's, you know, depression and anxiety. Nonsense. They should be paying that. Of course they should. This appeal that you mentioned, no, it's a silly process that the insurance company has implemented to give someone hope. We've denied you, but if you just tell us you're appealing, maybe we'll look at it again. It's a waste of time. It's there to frustrate you. We need to deal with that by way of legal means. And of course, with respect to your employer, doesn't matter what the insurance company says. If you have a doctor's note that says you cannot work, your employer needs to give you that time off. They can't go by what the insurance company is saying. But don't give up when it comes to your insurance company. Don't play by their rules. Let us force the insurance company to pay the benefits that they should be paying, and it starts by giving us a call.
I want to read you a quick question here, Lawyer, and this is something we get asked all the time, and that is the insurance company allowed to hire someone to watch you and follow you around? Surveillance, basically. What do you think?
So this is how badly the insurance company doesn't want to pay you benefits. That sometimes they may hire someone, a private detective, some other person, to kind of see, are you, playing basketball and going to the gym, when you're supposed to be disabled. Yeah, generally speaking, an employer is allowed to, not an employer, an insurance company is allowed to have this surveillance in place. They can use that, but again, what they can't do is jump to conclusions. And they can't say, well, you walk to the store, therefore you can work. That's silly. You may have walked to the store, but it doesn't change the fact that you may be dealing with anxiety or depression, or that you were in pain for the next 3 days because of that. So they often try to use that surveillance evidence as some proof that you don't get benefits. Nonsense. It doesn't work that way. By the way, they can't intrude on your privacy. They can't, look into your house and make sure that they look at your private documents. There are limits to that surveillance, but it is possible for the insurance company to hire someone to look to see whether you're doing things that you're supposedly unable to do. If you think the insurance company has crossed the line, you better give us a call right away.
All right, pal, covered off nicely. We'll take one more short break and wrap up this show with a phone call on the other side. So stay tuned. That is on the way with more Ask a Lawyer here on CP24.
Lost your job? Disability denied? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit CP24.com/askalawyer and watch Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on CP24.
All right, welcome back. A few minutes to go here on Ask a Lawyer on CP24. Beyond the half hour, always reach out to Lior and his team by phone, 1-855-821-5900. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca. Lior, we're going to wrap up the show with another phone call from one of our listeners, so listen up. Here it comes.
I joined a mid-sized manufacturing company in a senior management role after a lot of back and forth. Things started out well, but after we lost a major client, the tone changed. The company president seemed to turn on me, and after just 9 months, I was let go. They gave me 1 week's pay and said I wasn't entitled to severance because I hadn't been there long enough. Is that actually true?
No. Both John and I are shaking our heads simultaneously. That must mean we know the answer. And of course we do, because no, short service does not mean you don't get severance. Yes, you get severance even as a short service employee. And in fact, you're going to be surprised just by how much severance you get as a short service employee. Of course, we may not like the reason he was let go. Maybe it had nothing to do with him that a client was lost. Ultimately, his employer was allowed to let him go, but severance had to be paid. And the idea, oh, you haven't worked long enough, silly, ridiculous, illegal. So I'm going to show you how much severance he's owed and how much you can find out for yourself how much you're owed. Once more, we're going to go to the severance calculator. You can find that at EmploymentLawyer.ca. Let's see the right amount. 49 years of age, been there for only 9 months, was given 1 week severance. No, he's owed 3 to 6 months. And it's probably closer to 6 months than 3. 3 to 6 months of severance, months, even as a short service employee with only 9 months. That's how the law works. That's how generous severance is. Check out EmploymentLawyer.ca. It will take you seconds to find out how much you're owed, or even just as good or better yet, give me a call.
And that is where we are going to leave it for this show. Lior, thank you so much, and thank you for tuning in and contributing with those phone calls and questions as well. Reach out anytime, all the time, 1-855-821-5900. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca. And Lior just mentioned it there again. PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca is the only website you need. Beyond that, CP24.com/AskALawyer. And we will catch you again doing it all over again next week. Thanks for watching.